Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. Honorable President of today's program, highly qualified judges, and my dear friends. Today I have been honored to speak on a very important topic, that is Muslims and India's freedom struggle. In this gathering, I will shed some light on the sacrifices of Indian Muslims for freeing India from the clutches of the English. Dear audience, the onslaught of Europe on India started with the Portuguese and pirates in 17th century, but it was heightened when the Englishmen of East India Company, disguised as traders, established bases with an eye on India's wealth and land. Shah Waliullah Muhaddis Dehlvi Rahmatullah Alayh was the first person who apprehended the danger. He chalked out a plan of complete revolution. His various books reflect his thought and profound a complete framework. Shah Waliullah is the font honor of this field. Later, his sons and pupils forwarded mission. Meanwhile, the company began to expand its area. It resulted in a fierce fight between the company and Siraj-ud-Dawla in Policy West Bengal in 1757. Siraj-ud-Dawla was defeated and the door was opened for Britain to occupy Bengal. Afterwards, Hyder Ali and his son, Tipu Sultan, stood up to stop English steps in southern India. But this campaign suffered major setback due to internal treachery, and Tipu was martyred fighting in Srirangapatna in 1799. The English general Nell climbed up his dead body and shouted, "From today, India is ours." And finally, in one day in 1803, the Mughal king in Delhi was forcibly asked to sign a treaty that read, "The people for Allah, the country for King His Majesty, and the order for the company." Meanwhile, Shah Abdul Aziz Rahmatullah Alayh, who was observing the situation, very carefully issued a fatwa saying that India has turned into a Darul Harb, non-Muslim country. Muslims must wage war against the British. But the ground was not prepared to start any revolutionary movement. So, Sayyid Ahmad Shahid, a disciple of Shah Abdul Aziz, with his companions migrated to Kandahar in Afghanistan in search of a land from where he can run a revolutionary movement. Unfortunately, the greatest militant movement of this subcontinent suffered sedition of Afghans and finally collapsed. The remaining people, especially Ulama Sadiqpur, continued their mission inside India. Dear audience, the sparks of hate and anger against the English burst again in 1857. This time it was not a mutiny of a group, but a mass revolt against the English throughout the country. In Shamli, Indians revolted in the leadership of Haji Imdadullah Rahmatullah Alayh, while they were fighting in Lucknow and Faizabad under the command of Begum Nawab and Molana Ahmadullah. Meerut and Delhi were the centers where Indian army were fighting for Sultan Bahadur Shah Zafar. And finally, they were defeated in a large. According to historians, 27,000 Muslims were only hanged to death. After the defeat of 1857 revolution, the Muslim leaders changed their strategy. They started setting up educational institutions across the country to combat the disastrous British policies. On the foremost of them was Molana Muhammad Qasim Nanotwi, who established Darul Uloom in Dewan in 1866. The first student of Darul Uloom Dewan, Maulana Mahmud Hassan, known as Sheikhul Hind, chalked out a plan known as Reshmi Rumal movement, Silken Letters movement. Around 1919, Jamiat Ulama Hind came into being to provide Muslims a platform to fight against the British. And as well as Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was the hero of India's independence. Through his writings and particularly historics, newspapers, Al-Hilal and Al-Balag, he heated up the subcontinent with warm slogans of freedom. And Muslims had always held high the torch of patriotism and freedom fighting. Dear audience, the purpose to mention these sacrifices is to remind you our brave past, since it is said that a nation which fails to treasure its history is lost in the darkness of time. Here I conclude my speech. Thank you so much.